like washing your own car, then take it to the next level with the
American Airlines hates this bag.
There's a bone right here and a bone right here.
We say your boyfriend's name. He is.
I'm on the case.
Not Soraka for regretting her choices. Don't worry. Don't worry. I really don't fucking want magical footwear, but the other two fucking suck, so that's tragic. Seven-year-old found essay till spinal cord is visible? Sign me up. Stephanie Sue, listen. I'm about to listen to that while I do my laundry. There's a fuck ton too today. And I have this fucking pimple. Take this pimple off my fucking face, please. Buy items, Joe.
Is to ward off the evil spirits or the disease-causing evil eye. They focus primarily on traditional medicine, and on a daily basis, these Buddha houses, they open their front doors and there's all sorts of people coming in. People with illnesses that doctors cannot even pinpoint or perhaps even cure. People with strange new hallucinations forming. Or sometimes, people involved in very mysterious accidents. Like 7-year-old Helen. Her little body appears very crumpled when she's carried in through the Buddha house's front door. They're asking what happened. I mean, they need to know so that they can even try to heal her. And the general story seems all over the place. I mean, she's brought in by her neighbors who try to explain, well, we don't really know what happened, but here's what we think happened. At the entrance of their house, all of their houses, they have this bar. It's like about the height of an adult. It's a wooden bar. And apparently the kids in the neighborhood, they would swing on that bar all the time. Just swing back and forth like they're doing pull-ups. She must have been swinging when she fell and hit her head. And she's not responding now. Look, there's cuts all over her body. I mean, that looks like she would fall and maybe scrape herself on a branch, right? Pieces of wood, rocks. It's not completely unbelievable. And it's true, there's lots of rocks around that door. She must have hit her head on one of those. Her little 3-year-old sister had found her laying on the ground outside their front door. She didn't even understand what was going on. So she went to grab a family member, a 15-year-old girl, so just kids. And she tells her, look, Heaven's outside playing. She's sleeping. The 15-year-old is
Butt cheeks to heck, man.
On the ground, puts her hand on Heaven, and by this point, Heaven is cold. She's screaming. This 15-year-old is screaming for all the neighbors, all the adults to come help. And now they've rushed little Heaven to the Buddha house to be healed. Heaven is 7 years and 7 months old, but she looks closer to 5 because of how tiny she is. And the healers could just take one look at Heaven, and they knew there is no healing to be done. This little girl is already dead. questions now are, if she had fallen so hard that it killed her, wouldn't she have fractured a bone? Wouldn't she have broken a bone? Or if she hit her head on a rock as she came down, wouldn't she have bled a lot more? The only blood that they found on her body was on the back of her dress is this tiny tear-sized blood droplet. When Heaven's mom finally sees her 7-year-old daughter's body, she finds something very odd. The little girl's mouth, there's something inside of her mouth. It's like sand. It's actually more like cement. It's sand mixed with water to make this very thick mixture, and there's even pebbles inside, and it looks like she just has a mouth full of cement. What do you mean? So she's falling and she just eats a chunk of cement? It doesn't even make sense. On top of that, she has a full handprint around her neck. I mean, you could see 5 finger markings where someone had dug into her little daughter's neck. You cannot say that's from a rock. How could the neighbors try to even tell her that this is a result of her falling off a bar? How could they argue that her mouth had to be filled with this sand so that she could be healed? They said that is healing sand. It feels like everyone is in on this one big conspiracy of what happened to Heaven. Nobody will tell Heaven's mom what actually happened because this is not the truth, clearly. And Heaven's mom is on a journey to figure out what the hell happened to her daughter. We would like to thank today's partners who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support Abraham's Oasis. They are a non-religious, local, legally registered nonprofit in Ethiopia that provides medical care, food, and a safe haven for lost, abandoned, separated children in the aftermath of the war. Additionally, there is a change.org petition for Heaven and her family that we will be linking in the description, so please check that out. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team, and we would also like to thank you guys for your continued support as we work on our mission to be worthy advocates. As always, full show notes are available at rottenmangopodcast.com. A few disclaimers before we get into today's case. This is a highly requested case. I tried to do all the research in English and it just wasn't working, so we worked with a wonderful Ethiopian translator to help gather the source material for today's episode and fill in the extra needed context. But as always, if there is anything mistranslated, miscommunicated, or any additional information you may have, please leave it in the comments. A few disclaimers: there are mentions of CA, CSA, and descriptions of a brutal death of someone under the age of 10. Please always prioritize your mental health and well-being, stay safe, and if you can't handle today's episode, take a walk. We'll see you in the next one. With that being said, let's get into it. As a custodian for the bank, there's a few rules that you have to follow. Most banks operate on a buddy system. Nobody is opening or closing the bank by themselves. Unlike other businesses where they tell the employees, hey, go park at the very back of the parking lot so that the customers can park near the front, bank employees are typically told to park very close to whichever exit they leave from, likely the back exit, in a well-lit area of the parking lot. More often than not, if they're closing down the bank, they leave through a man trap. It's where, typically at the back of the bank, they have a back door. You exit out that door, then lock the door behind you. But instead of being outside of the building, you're in this small little box, and there's another door in front of you. You unlock that door, walk out, lock it behind you, and now you're fully outside. This is to make sure that on your way out, no one barges their way into the back of the bank. A man trap is added for extra security. Being a custodian for the bank is not the most well-paying job. I mean, she used to be a nurse for 7 years, but this is safer. Mainly because there's security cameras everywhere, and so she thought, that way, if someone comes for her, if they try to kill her, at least it'll all be caught on camera, right? 4 months into her job, she's helping close up the bank. She's walking out into the dark parking lot when the security guard stops her. What's wrong? Is that car picking you up? Are you waiting on a car? She wasn't. She looks around, and in the darkness of the parking lot, she can make out a car with these few young, bulky men, that's how she describes it, just standing around the car, and she's squinting to get a better look. She recognizes one of them. It's the one that escaped from prison, the one that essayed and murdered her 7-year-old daughter, Heaven. Heaven's mom had just clocked in as a scrub nurse at the local hospital. This is before Heaven passed. This is before she works at the bank. She reaches into her pocket and she's gonna put her phone on silent, which is a very normal routine during surgeries. Because she's a scrub nurse, she can't touch her phone. She can't turn off the ringer if it goes off. But something in her tells her, what's the point in turning it on to silent? Nobody calls her anyway while she's at work, and she's basically at work all the time. Let's just keep it on. She scrubs in for surgery. They're working on this man who has a fractured shoulder from a fall. It must have been a pretty nasty fall. His shoulder is looking rough. And all of a sudden, ding, 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 ding. Her phone starts ringing in the middle of surgery, and this is exactly what she was supposed to avoid. She let it ring because she can't touch it. She's starting to sweat. The doctor is staring at her like, hello, why did you not silence your phone? And then it stops. Then it starts again. She says at this point, one of the other nurses comes in, grabs her phone from
You
the
dumb
pocket,
bitch.
leaves
Can you
the operating room, and
do
picks up the call
some,
from her.
like, take the
She
fucking
is
word.
informed.
Are you?
It's an emergency. You gotta leave. Her daughter is sick. Heaven's mom remembers thinking in that moment, first of all, my daughter
I regret
really
my
ever gets sick.
choices.
Second of all, she just saw her
You
this
should.
morning. She was the
You
one
should
that
regret
woke her up.
all
Heaven was like,
choices
Mommy,
the
you gotta
moment the
wake up.
fucking
You're gonna
thing
be late for
loaded
work.
up.
Come on, get up.
Respectfully.
She's full of energy. She would have noticed if her daughter seemed even a little bit ill. I mean, she's a nurse. On the doctor's instruction, Heaven's mom runs out of work. She grabs the nearest
You typed in your
taxi
username and
goes
password
straight
for
home.
this.
And when she gets there, her daughter's not there. She's been taken to a
the
Buddha
shit
house,
I'm
a
talking
traditional
about.
healer, and nobody is telling her which Buddha house. All the adults inside the neighborhood, gone. The only person left in the neighborhood, if you will, is your landlord, Demoted. To give you some context from our Ethiopian researcher, a lot of people rent out a house in a fully fenced space. So inside of this fully gated yard is normally one big house where the landlord lives with typically their extended family. So it's not just like a nuclear family unit, maybe grandparents, maybe sisters, siblings of the landowners. And then nearby this big house, there's a few smaller 1 to 2 bedroom houses that are built onto the property that people can rent. It's kind of like detached guest houses that you can rent out of. Oftentimes, there's one bathroom that's a separate building that all the residents of all the individual houses use. It's kind of like a small 3-4 family community behind each fence. That's what I'm referring to when I say
Tempo
the neighbors. The
does not
neighborhood.
exist. Look how low Jhoeraine is.
Yes! Fist of fury!
Jhoeraine was no R. Fucking Heimer was no R. It was an easy kill on the Jhoeraine. Struggle on the back. What was that?
They're all typically relatives of Getnek.
They're all kind of.
Yes. Now, she's trying to ask Getnek, because he's the only one left behind, the landlord, what the hell is going on? Where are your sisters? Where is your wife? Where is my daughter? Where is Heaven? Within a few hours, slowly, little bits and pieces start unraveling, and Heaven's mom will find herself in another hospital room witnessing her 7-year-old daughter's autopsy. Heaven's mom was told that her little girl had fallen from a wooden bar that she was swinging off of because kids like to do what kids do, you know, things that could potentially hurt them. There was no adult around directly supervising. She got hurt and she passed away. It's a freak accident, if you will. But as Heaven's mom, a nurse, is sitting in through this autopsy, she knows that they're all lying to her. Every single one of them, every single one of her neighbors, every single one of the adults, every single one of the people she trusted with her kids, she doesn't believe a single word out of their mouths. If she fell from a wooden bar swing, would she have fractured bones? Yes. Would she have a broken bone? Probably. Would she have fractures to her skull if it killed her from the fall? But instead, she has these strange cuts that are all over her body that are almost too identical in depth and length, like someone had done it themselves. There's only one single droplet of blood on her, And just a brief content warning here, please be aware that Heaven's autopsy results are incredibly disturbing. It is very clear from the get-go that Heaven did not pass from a fall. She has extensive injuries. Her cause of death appears to be strangulation. There are finger markings around her neck, embedded in her neck. You can almost see someone's handprint. The muscles around her private areas were all torn. You cannot explain that from a fall. There is extensive physical trauma to her private parts.
What is he doing?
Had she not been strangled to death,
doing?
she likely would have died from her injuries to her private parts. In an interview with her mother, she describes the true condition of her daughter's body. She states that the tearing on her daughter's private parts were so bad to the extent that, quote, only her spinal cord is visible and her uterus cannot be seen. If you are someone like me without kids or you're not around children frequently, Heaven is described as being a very small 7-year-old, about the size of a kindergartner. They're typically not even 4 feet tall yet at this point. Who would do something like that to this tiny little girl? Heaven's mom realizes pretty on that every single person in the neighborhood is lying. She did not fall. This is not an accident. She was essayed and she was murdered viciously. So she starts running through the possibilities in her mind of who could have done
Heimer's
this.
turret range being all the way into that tri-bush sitting right there is crazy. That's crazy.
Her landlord. Heaven's mom remembered asking Getnet over and over, what happened? What happened? Please, where is she? What happened? And he's obviously acting strange. He refuses to answer. In fact, he could barely keep eye contact with her. He just stares into the void. He's sitting on his couch, not responding. It's so weird. When she kept asking him, did you see something? What did you see? I mean, you're like one of the only adults on the property at the time. He just kept saying, what? Huh? And refusing to answer. She looks down and she sees that his hands keep going in and out of his pockets. Like he's sweating, like he's fidgeting, he's hiding something. At this point, Heaven's body had already been taken to the Buddha house. Heaven's mom is demanding Getnet take the landlord, take her there. Which one? Your sisters took her, so you must know. You are here, it's not like you just got home. Your sisters took her to the Buddha house. Finally, he's like, okay, I will take you to the Buddha house. And before he gets into the taxi, he grabs a gabi to wear. Now, from what I'm told, a gabi is like a white cloak that many wear to attend funerals. Nobody had even given confirmation that Heaven was dead yet.
Like he's going to Heaven's funeral right now?
Yeah.
Is the energy?
Yeah, like he's like, okay, she's dead. Let me grab this. But Heaven's mom has no idea what even happened. She just had word that she's sick. Why are you grabbing funeral attire? She's so confused by this. It's like he knew before anybody else knew. Even later, when they get to the Buddha house, they eventually rush Heaven to the hospital. Doctors reported that Getnet was acting very strangely. He wasn't crying at all, which that alone isn't the most alarming thing in the world. But at one point, he tries to sneak into the autopsy room. He gets caught trying to sneak in. He gets kicked out. Then he retreats into the bathroom. Now, at this point, the doctors are like, this guy is very strange. We need to figure out what's going on with this guy. They listen through the cracks of the bathroom wall. And for some reason, they're alarmed enough to even call the police. They push their ear up to the hole, and they hear him, Getnet, the landlord, the only adult present during the time, on the phone saying, I'm at the hospital right now. Yeah, my neighbor's kid was R-worded and murdered. They haven't performed the autopsy yet.
So when they brought the kid into the hospital, the doctor obviously knows what's going on.
The only thing the doctors are told is that she fell. She fell. So the doctors are like, okay, well, we got to perform an autopsy. It's a little bit strange, but they haven't performed an autopsy. They're not coming to a conclusion. When they catch him sneaking into the autopsy room, very strange. They listen to him, and then he's like, she's been R-worded, but they don't know that information yet. How does he know that information? So at this point, all everyone had said about Heaven was she had fallen and she had passed. How would he know that she had been R-worded? Once they search his place, they go and they search his house, they find Heaven's other shoe inside his house. There would be no reason for her shoe, the one shoe that's missing, the ones that she was wearing that day. She only had one shoe on her foot. The other was in his house. There would be no reason for that. Heaven's mom had lived next door to him for 2 years. She had known the entire family for 2 years. The man in the bathroom, Genet, is Heaven's mom's landlord. And not even that, the man's wife is someone that Heaven's mom had known since she was in school, like primary school. She's known this woman for most of her life. She's one of the main reasons that Heaven's mom was like, you know what? I'm gonna rent this house specifically. So it's well known in Ethiopia that a lot of parents will rent these guest houses, if you will, on this bigger property. The bigger property is completely fenced in, and as long as one adult is home on the entire property, the other adults will go to work. So it's kind of like a safe space environment, a gated neighborhood for the kids to play with each other, and it's not like each house needs to have an adult present. Typically it's one adult for maybe 3-4 families. So she rented this place because she wanted to make sure the environment was safe for her daughters. Now, Getnet and his family, they have 3 children. They have children Heaven's age. She said, I saw him as a brother. I lived there because I felt a sense of ease there with him. He and his family are the only ones I trusted enough to move into their property. Not that it really matters if this was premeditated or not, because he deserves the harshest punishment regardless, but it's pretty evident that he went out of his way to plot out this crime. Heaven's mom said in an interview, he was waiting. We just didn't know he was waiting. When his wife left, because his wife is a stay-at-home wife, when his wife left because I think one of her siblings was getting a checkup at the hospital for a pregnancy, he was the only one left with the kids. He's in the house most of the time because he doesn't have a job either. So after his wife and I left, our children start playing outside together, and that's what my sister told me. So Heaven's mom's sister is home, which she's 15. So she's a child, right?
Heaven's mom's sister is 15.
So this is Heaven's aunt. This is the 15-year-old that her little sister comes. So Heaven has a little sister that's 3 years old. Heaven is 7, and then she has an aunt that's 15 that is staying with them.
So the aunt's technically a child as well.
Yes. So Getnet is the only adult that's there, really. Now, she says, that's what my sister told me. Then Heaven came into the house because she said Getnet told all the kids to go home. So all the kids are playing in the yard, and Getnet is like, everybody just go into your homes, which is weird. Heaven goes into the house, according to Heaven's aunt, the 15-year-old. And at that point, she starts doing her homework, and she realizes, oh, I need to go use the restroom. Now, remember how I said a lot of the houses are built? They share a common restroom in an outside building. It's like a separate little outhouse. Well, Heaven was taught to bring water to clean herself down there after she uses the restroom. So she has to get water from the 15-year-old. She tells her 15-year-old aunt, can I get some water for the restroom? She gives her the water, Heaven leaves, and never comes back. Getnet has been presumably waiting for her, saying things like, hey, Heaven, come here, can you help me with something? Now, this is not a strange man. This is their landlord, the man that she's seen for the past 2 years. I mean, the father of her friends. Heaven likely walks over to not be rude, and because nothing is alarming about this, but he snatches her, and he already had prepared this mixture in a water bottle. Sand, pebbles, and water. If you mix sand and water, it's basically cement. Even sand alone is difficult to get out of your mouth, but if you were to put sand, water, and pebbles, he forces her to drink this concoction. He forces it down her throat and stuffs her mouth full of it so that even if she screams, nobody can hear her. He brutally assaults her in what her mom describes as, quote, the front and back, to the point where he tears all of the muscles and there are extensive internal injuries. And the reason that I wasn't trying to be as specific is the internal injuries seem to be so bad that her mom states when you were to just peer inside from the autopsy, you cannot see her uterus. You can only see her spinal cord. Like, that's how extensive the internal injuries were. Afterwards, he takes her body, contorts her, shoves her into a bucket to wash away the evidence. There are reports that he likely mixed bleach into the bucket to clean up after his crime, to get rid of any forensic evidence on Heaven's body. In the process of trying to get rid of evidence, he goes and grabs a washcloth. So a lot of people, especially even in Korea, they will wash washcloths and then hang them outside to dry. He grabs a washcloth that Heaven's mom had left outside to dry, and he wipes down Heaven's body with it. He puts her clothes back on, takes a razor blade, and starts making cuts all over her body as if to make it appear that she was scratched by branches after falling. He even sets up a scarf around that wooden bar to make it seem like she was swinging on the wooden bar and fell, and she scraped herself as she fell. So they said that the kids would hang the scarf and then take the loose ends of the scarf and swing back and forth. The final sick touch is, this is almost directly in front of her mom's doorstep, just waiting to be found. The only part of his plan that does not go accordingly is he had forgotten one of her shoes that was the one tiny shoe that's left behind in his house. This is how he is caught. Getnet, the landlord, is the killer. The police throw him into jail. But after 3 days, his jail cell empty. He escapes. The police tell Heaven's mom, it's pretty clear that he did it. We're pretty certain he's the one that did it. You're right. But he escaped, and we recommend that maybe you flee. Maybe you leave, honestly. What? Yeah, he mentioned that he wanted to kill you. They do not provide her any assistance or protection. Like, they make it very clear, hey, this is your problem. He told us that he wants to kill you, and we're not going to do anything about it. At first, Getnek and his family, they would send people to talk to Heaven's mom, which, according to our Ethiopian researcher, they said, and this is very common, that if you have some sort of misunderstanding, especially between multiple families or different adults or a big fight with someone, you're going to send third parties to try and diffuse the situation first. A peacemaker that can facilitate both parties coming together. He just wants her to drop the case, drop the charges, move on. But Heaven's mom refuses. I mean, how can people even stand by him? How can they even come to her doorstep and be like, you gotta forgive this man? It is so clear that his sisters, his wife, they know what he did, but they're standing by him. They keep trying to tell Heaven's mom this is a big misunderstanding. The fact that Heaven's body was washed was not because Getnet was trying to get rid of evidence. No, it's because at the Buddha house, we were there with her, they poured holy water on her. You know, we were just trying to save her. We were pouring holy water on her. Because Heaven's mom is saying, look, this man washed Heaven's body of the evidence. There would be probably more evidence had he not washed her. They're saying, he didn't wash her. Nobody washed her to get rid of evidence. No, it's holy water that we poured on her to save her. And the sand in her mouth? I mean, have you heard of Mnet? Mnet is usually some sort of, it's a real thing, sand, ash, or crushed granite that is taken from a holy place. And it's placed or smeared onto one's body. Usually you only smear it on the parts that are in pain. So if you sprain your wrist, a traditional Ethiopian healer might apply this to your wrist where you feel the pain, and it's almost like a dry brown clay-like appearance. Then you pray, and then you will typically feel healed. They start arguing that the sand or the cement found inside of Heaven's mouth is just that, healing clay. But nobody ever consumes healing clay. If someone were to fall off a wooden bar or a tree, the last place you would imagine all their pain is in their mouth. You might smear it on their head or their face or their skull. Why inside the mouth? Like, how do you explain that?
So these are the killer's family members.
Yes.
And they're arguing with the killer.
Yes. They're arguing all sorts of crazy things for him. I mean, it's like the most ridiculous stuff. Getnet's relative explained that she's like, I'm the one that did that. His sister is like, I did that. I put it inside Heaven's mouth because, quote, I know it's sand, but every morning I mix it with water for my children to drink. Because they're like, why would you put it in her mouth? And she said, because I make my children drink it. And they ask, well, does it melt when you mix it with water? She responds, you put your faith in God. That's how you live. That's why I have Emma in my house always. I did the same thing for her that I do for my children, that is all.
Is common.
She's not even answering the question. I mean, none of this makes sense. Everyone who uses Mnet is like, what are you saying? This doesn't even make sense. Like, if I saw a kid that was laying there, I would not shove Mnet into her mouth. The twisted part of all of this is that Heaven's mom believes that they took Heaven to the Buddha house for the purpose of getting rid of more evidence and trying to come up with explanations for the evidence that they couldn't get rid of. So I'm sure that they scooped out as much of the sand and cement in her mouth as possible, but there's remaining. You can't get it all out. And of course they're gonna find it in the autopsy, so they're taking her to this traditional Buddha house to be like, of course we did these traditional actions to try and save her. If I have to write an email on my own with no help, I can honestly tell you that I will overthink it. My biggest worry is that my tone will be completely off from how I wanted it to sound. Like, I never want to sound rude or angry, and I'll read it over 50 times just to make sure that never happens, but then I end up sounding way too nice. Like, hey, please come step all over me because I have no boundaries. So it's finding the perfect middle, which is why writing an email used to take me forever, but Grammarly saves me so much time. My favorite thing about Grammarly is that it helps me find the right tone for my email. They'll suggest better wording and even personalize my writing based on the type of person I'm writing to and the context of my message. I never have to worry about, is my writing being unclear? Because Grammarly makes sure my email is clear and concise the first time, meaning I can cut down on the unnecessary back and forth. Grammarly helps me stay focused and even helps with my writing by giving me relevant and real-time suggestions. I also know that my data is safe with Grammarly because they have enterprise-grade security, meaning your data is always secure and never sold. Grammarly literally saves me so much time because I don't need to spend hours on drafting. They fix any spelling mistakes and include any punctuation that I miss. And on top of that, Grammarly works across more than 500,000 apps and websites.